Howdy folks, Jamboriki here, and welcome to another episode of Jamboriki Sandwich, the film and animation themed podcast variety show. Joining me is my co-host, Viva Becker.
Hello.
What's with that voice? So, what's interesting about this episode is that there has been a big change since we last recorded together. The world is now in quarantine, and that slightly affects the show, sort of, because sometimes we usually talk about films we've seen in cinemas, but now it's a completely different climate when it comes to watching stuff. So how have you kept yourself entertained? What have you been watching?
Nothing good. I had a long list of things that I wanted to watch with my free time. I had a list of a lot of great shows. I was going to start Castlevania Season 2. And what have I done with my life? I just wasted 2 weeks watching Rescue Vet. It's just I've spent my time watching Rescue Vet. It's like a reality TV show. I follow vets and they rescue different animals.
Do you know why that's the main thing you've been watching? Is there some kind of appeal that you could explain?
I think it's funny how low the production quality is on it. Their narration is like it's got to be at least 3 dB quieter than everything else in the show.
So more than anything, it's sort of a guilty pleasure series that's keeping you going.
Absolutely wonderful, but a real waste of my time, honestly.
No, I completely get it, because I feel like most people have that reality show that they know is awful, is staged, is terribly put together, but they can't stop going back to it, especially when they're feeling down. And for me, that's any of like Gordon Ramsay shows where he goes to help like a hotel or a restaurant, anything to do with that. I'm a sucker for anything with that. I know the formula. I know how things are going to go. I know what is scripted and what is unscripted, but I still love going back to it just to see everything fall apart. And yeah. So I definitely get the appeal. So that's the main thing you've been watching, yeah?
Trash. Yes, that's the main thing. Trash.
I've watched a mix of stuff because, on the one hand, I've wanted to catch up with movies that I missed at cinemas. So I've ended up seeing a bunch of that. But at the same time, because of the quarantine and because my video schedule is now more relaxed, I'm having time to get into stuff that's being hyped. Usually if there's something that everyone's discussing, I'm left out because I'm busy working on a video or something else. And at the moment, the biggest talked about thing right now, and I'm not sure if you've had time to see it because of Rescue Vet, but I've just finished watching Tiger King.
Jesus Christ.
Have you seen it?
No, and I'm not going to see it. It looks like trash.
It's insanity. Imagine a chef is making you a soup, right? At first, the ingredients seem pretty standard. Vegetables, spices, etc. But then, this cook starts throwing in jellyfish tentacles, ice cream, and peanut butter. You're a little weirded out and taken back, yet remain calm. However, the chef then starts putting in rusty nails, used syringes, and snake venom. Now you're beginning to freak the hell out. But before you can tell them to stop, the next ingredients turn out to be human eyeballs, cyanide, and moon rocks. That is how much the show escalates. Like, you think things have found their line, but there's constantly a new reveal or a new twist where you're kind of just so shocked. And, like, it gets so weird that it has challenged my ability to suspend my disbelief when it comes to critiquing anything fictional now. Because the moment I know I'm going to say, hey, this would never happen, I'm going to call back to Tiger King. For those of you who don't know, this is a show about big cat owners, and it mainly focuses on this very eccentric and charismatic zookeeper called Joe Exotic. But he's just one of many characters that the documentary series follows. And there's 7 episodes. And at the end of each episode, they will nonchalantly drop some kind of new information on you. and you're like, wait, what? And you have to come back. Obviously, it's a Netflix pattern that they're doing, but it's just crazy. It's like just constantly goddamn crazy. How else? I don't know how to like explain it, but what the series has the advantage of is vast amounts of footage to work with. I think maybe 5 years. So if they're talking about something, they have something to cut too. It's not all just talking heads. It's a bit like, do you know the Fire Festival documentary? Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, that's another documentary of a shit show. But that film had the advantage of like loads of stuff to cut to, lots of stuff to work with, and you're just kind of spectating the mayhem, just letting the madness unfold. It's definitely entertaining in the sense of where you don't know where things are going to go, and anything. Just if you do end up watching it, if anyone ends up deciding to watch it, don't accept anything as normal just yet. Like the first couple of episodes are tame, and that's saying a lot. So just bear with it. So yeah, that's what I've just finished watching that. Yeah.
So, but why does it make you feel good, James?
I wouldn't say feel good, but intrigued. I was curious of like I knew we were only at we hadn't gone down the rabbit hole by say episode 3, and it was already getting crazy. It's like a circus show. It is like a circus show, almost. Like you're watching this travesty happen. And anytime you think, oh, I like this person seems sane, or this person seems to be on the side of looking after animals. Nope! Next episode, you're like, they were a terrible person. So it's a mix of shock factor and yeah, I think that's it. It's just mainly shock. It's driven by how much it can shock you. What I will commend the show on is the fact that it distracted me so much that I forgot we were in quarantine. That's kind of saying a lot. Like, I've watched a lot of films lately, and none of them took me out of reality that much, and maybe go like, hey, hang on, things could be crazier. So the other thing I've watched is this show called Tower of God. It's based on a South Korean webtoon manga, and everyone's been discussing it. Only episode 1's been released, but everyone's been chatting about it, and I thought, well, okay, I have time to watch an episode, let's give it a chance. Have you heard of this series?
No.
So, Tower of God is about this boy called Bam, who is trying to climb to the top of the tower so that he can find this girl he loves called Rachel. And as he's going through the tower, he's going through different levels, and he has a different test on each level. I will say that the main appeal is the test aspect, because every time he goes up a floor, you don't know what the challenge could be. The art style is a little rough, but it's good animation. It's fluid. It's got motion. But I know some people are a little put off by the art style. It kind of reminds me of Bruce Lee's Game of Death, but with a fantasy aspect. My only real problem with it so far, based on episode 1, is that the hero seems to be handed things to him because women find him attractive. Like, anytime he's, like, screwed over, a woman will be like, well, here's a sword. Oh, here's the power of the earth. Here you go. You've got a good face. It's like, wait, what? And I'm a little afraid that's going to be too much of a crutch for him. I do hope that he finds himself in some way and starts to work by himself more. He seems a little unconfident. But the thing is, everyone seems really excited for this show. And I've seen in comments people saying like, oh, this is really living up to the manga. So maybe the manga has given an impression to everyone that this is a really awesome story. Maybe it's... So I'm going to give it a chance. I will admit the first episode is also a bit too fast and like throws you in the deep end straight away. Like everything you need to know is given in the prologue, just smashed towards you, and there's no there's no real world building, but perhaps they're going to drip feed further details. Don't know.
How is the story at keeping you invested in the mission of the kid?
That's the thing. That's the thing that's making me kind of like, I don't know if I would carry this on. Is that the kid isn't that interesting so far and doesn't seem prepared for this, but maybe that's the attraction of the story, is seeing this kid who's kind of like throwing himself into this mess and he doesn't know what he's doing, and seeing him grow and adapt. Maybe that's the appeal. I don't know.
You told me that the whole reason he's trying to get up this tower thing is like the reuniting with a love interest.
Yeah.
I feel like usually that story only works if you are invested at all in the relationship, or you know the love interest or something. And it doesn't seem like they introduce any of that.
They do kind of have like a flashback giving an idea of what their relationship is, but it's, again, because of the pacing of the episode, it's very fast. So I wouldn't say I was invested, but I will say that they're trying to develop this relationship. It's there. Maybe we'll get more flashbacks in future episodes. I don't know. But at the moment, I'm not that fussed about what their story is. Are you ready to discuss the news?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The real news, the real important news right now.
Well, that's the thing that's really difficult, to find news when everything is being delayed.
Yeah, besides like, oh, this was canceled, this was
canceled. Yeah, everything's
been
delayed or cancelled, pushed forward, and there's very much a big feeling of uncertainty in Hollywood right now, and like not knowing how long this is going to go on for, and how, yeah, it's very difficult. It's been very difficult on my end to find interesting news besides this has been delayed. But the first thing we're going to discuss is Edgar Wright is currently planning to work on a movie about robot dentist. Okay, so according to the Hollywood Reporter, Wright is set to direct the story from Simon Stevenson's upcoming novel Set My Heart to 5. The novel, that will only hit shelves later this year, is said to be about a robot dentist called Jared, who experiences human emotion for the first time after being exposed to 80s and 90s movies. It becomes Jared's mission to reunite with his creator and write his own film in order to convince humans that robots have every right to feel the same way that humans do. So, what would you say is your first impressions of this announcement?
I'm always interested to see what Edgar Wright has to say. This is one of my favorite directors of all time.
Same.
And I mean, I don't know that much about the artist himself, so I'm saying that he's responsible for a body of work that I really admire. One of the things that I really enjoy the most about Edgar Wright's stuff is that the characters and the stories that he's done so far have not really been characters and stories that I am naturally interested in or that I would gravitate towards, and that in most directors' hands I would not enjoy watching that stuff. But with a lot of his films, he tries to take on a challenge that's really not needed there and just takes it above and beyond and gives it a layer of entertainment beyond just the story. And, so I'm interested to see if he can do that with this story, because once again, it's a very cliche story. It sounds like it's cashing in on everything that's super popular right now. The whole 80s nostalgia thing is, people have just been beating that dead horse a lot recently. I also want to put out there that I'm coming to this story like very familiar with Edgar Wright's work and not at all familiar with the author.
Same.
Simon Stevenson's book. So when I'm saying all that stuff about the story sounding cliche and not very good, that's only from the very brief summary that was on
first impression
on the thing. It could be a good one. I don't want Simon Stevenson's feelings to be hurt.
That's it. You've started now. All of Simon Stephens fans are coming after you now. It's too late.
Dang it! I've alienated all of his many fans.
Another community distance away. Are you gonna piss off now?
So, yeah. Okay. Let's not give anybody any ideas. Okay. If anyone can do it, I think Edgar Wright can elevate that material.
Well, that's the thing. He has an amazing track record. Really impressive track record. The appeal for me is that I'm a sucker for movies about making films. Right, even if they're not good, I immediately find myself attracted to this as a film nerd and as a filmmaker. So I already like the premise for this project, and Edgar Wright does not shy about his love for cinema. He's often paying homage to classics in his movies, so he seems like a fitting director for this kind of concept. And Edgar's films are very fast and adrenaline fueled, but they have slick editing and snappy pacing. But the thing is, his movies also have moments of levity and pathos, and he knows when to stop for character development or atmosphere building. Like, it's not fast for the sake of it. Like, each image that he throws at the audience has a meaning. And his direction style is renowned for keeping the ball rolling. And that's what makes me very interesting about this premise, because it seems to sound like it's leaning more towards drama than comedy. And because I love seeing filmmakers being challenged and showing a change of pace, I'm intrigued to see how Edgar would handle something maybe slower and more dramatic.
Well, Baby Driver was pretty dramatic, heavy.
That's one I've not seen. That's the only one I've not watched. So if that's the case, I'm interested to see how well he does. Do you have any opinion on how well he handled the drama in that film?
The drama, I think, was handled okay. I mean, when you think about the characters themselves and the story, like I said, with all of his movies, when you actually think about the character and the story, it's very simple. It's the filmmaking and the execution of the film that really elevates it. So the drama was handled, I think, satisfactory, but it wasn't like an amazing drama, like the best version of a film drama on its own, isolated from the rest of the elements of the movie.
What I'm wondering about, though, is how the whole dentist aspect plays into the story. It seems irrelevant in the big picture and the way that it's been described, but also a huge selling point too. Like, all the headlines right now about this film are really pointing out it's about a robot dentist. That's crazy. I'm very intrigued to see what dental hygiene has to do with filmmaking and cinema history, but Edgar is great at tying themes together to get across a deeper meaning, like music culture and video game aesthetics in Scott Pilgrim, or police authority and community prejudice in Hot Fuzz. So I trust him to find some kind of connection, but at the moment I'm like, how?
I'm just hoping that, the point of it being like a robot dentist is that it's not supposed to be, like a nice looking, human-looking robot. I want it to look like the toothpaste factory arm robot from the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movies.
That's a very specific reference.
I want that. Anyone, if you can find a picture of that, like, robot that replaces the guy putting on the tops of the toothpaste, that arm thing, that's what I want the goddamn robot dentist to look like. Put up a picture right there.
Okay, we've got it on screen now. Everyone can see it.
If it doesn't look exactly like that robot, then I am just going to be so disappointed, and I will be addressing all of my complaints straight to Mr. Wright.
Well, the thing about Edgar Wright is that he's very much an actor's director, and a lot of his films put an emphasis on his cast members. And so I have a very strong feeling that it's going to be human looking. I mean, I've read that it's described more as an android, so it's probably going to look very human. But I'm not sure who could end up playing it. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't figure someone right away that would really work. So one of my only real concerns is that if the film does go down the comedy route, the joke of the robot developing emotions and feelings becomes too obnoxious. With the humour coming from how over-emotional he behaves, that could get annoying. Hopefully not, we'll see. I do have a lot of trust in Edgar Wright though. Anyway, it's time to move on to the next news announcement. There's going to be an anthology movie that works around the quarantine. According to Screen Daily, Kazakh-Russian filmmaker Timur Bekmetov, whose credits include Night Watch, Day Watch and the English language Wanted, has launched a contest to crowdsource stories from the global lockdown with which to produce an anthology film. He is inviting submissions of short videos and script pitches that offer real stories and fictional takes on the coronavirus pandemic that has seen more than a third of the world's population placed under some kind of lockdown. The resulting short films will be told in Bekmetov's Screenlife format, where the video is framed inside the screen of a computer, smartphone or similar device. Thoughts?
Right. So this sounds awful. This sounds like a farce. Obviously just trying to make some money on the situation, and it's ridiculous. I know. I mean, first of all, we all know that the whole seeking both real and fictional stories thing is only in there so that on the like at the beginning of the movie they can put it in a thing that's like based on real stories when none of it is real.
That's something I have felt since I saw the announcement of this, is that it feels slightly exploitative. And the thing is that I've not seen Timur's films. I've not seen any of them, so I can't fairly judge them. But he's not exactly an A-list director. Not many of his films seem to be critically acclaimed, and I've seen him on a lot of worst directors lists online. So that worries me. Again, I'm not saying that I agree with any of this, but from an outsider perspective, from someone that doesn't know his work, it doesn't really make me think that, yes, this is the man for the job. He has great quality control. He's the perfect person to look at all of these submissions. We can trust him. Can we?
I mean, the thing that worries me the most is in the statement where it said, in the article quoted, we are all living in a sort of movie. And I think that statement speaks to a kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes a good movie. Now, a movie can be, I mean, your definition of what a movie is can vary depending on who you are. And yes, for some people that includes just a video where things happen. But in my opinion, for a good movie, you need to understand the power of the fact that in the movie, there's someone who gets to think about and control everything that happens and why everything happens. And what people see, even in a documentary where you are documenting true events, there's a lot of power behind whoever's making the movie, and it's different than real life. Even if in real life something is happening, it doesn't happen because someone decided that's going to happen. It happened because that's just what's happening. So there's a big difference between something that's happening in real life and a good movie, and it doesn't seem like they understand the difference between a good movie that's been thought out and a good movie because, oh, something exciting is happening in it.
Yes, that does concern me, actually, because filmmakers and studios will have a habit of taking reality and exaggerating it slightly. And there's a lot of biographical movies that I love, but they're guilty of this, and it makes you kind of like on the fence to get that emotionally invested when it's established, okay, this is something real. But you can't really get into that when you know deep down, hang on, no, it probably didn't happen like this. So it's there's a disconnect.
It sounds to me like a cash grab. It doesn't sound like they're trying to make a good movie, and it doesn't sound like it just sounds like it's going to be another one of those really, really low budget, shot on computer movies where things happen for no reason and they're just trying to make money, and they're trying to connect this to a real life thing to try and make even more money on it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this money was already going to be put towards a different similar low budget movie, and then this happened and they're like, oh, we have an idea of how we can make even more for this money, you know?
Yeah. That is something concerning as well, is that each short is going to have a budget of only $10,000. And every other film that Timur has made with the whole screen life format, where everything's told through like a computer screen, films like Unfriended and Searching, they have budgets in the millions. So it goes back to your theory that the film is not about quality and is about cashing in, because if they were more confident about this kind of project and their heart was really in it, they might put more money towards it. But at the same time, possibly a cheap look could add authenticity in some way. I don't know.
I mean, they haven't even bothered to like plan out the story of the movie. They're doing an anthology, so they don't have to figure out some long storyline, and they're not even going to be writing the chapters. They want someone else to write them for them, basically, is what they're asking. Because they're like, send us your scripts, and we'll throw $10,000 at you.
Yeah.
And hopefully, with us doing the minimum amount of work, we're going to come out of this with something that we can throw up on Netflix, and people will be like, oh, I remember when that happened. Let me watch that.
That's probably the only thing that this film is going to achieve, is becoming a time capsule. Probably not a high-quality time capsule, but it is definitely something that will be placed in history. And perhaps
20 years from now, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's people like I can imagine like YouTubers in like a few decades from now being like, hey kids, did you know back years ago there was this quarantine and a filmmaker did this? Isn't this crazy? And they have like this wild thumbnail with their shocked face on it. I can imagine it having that kind of longevity. Yeah, so I think they possibly know that. I think they're aware that's what's going to... It's a gimmick. It is very much a gimmick.
In the Japanese horror movie Ring, the character of Shizuku Yamamura, the mother of Sadako, is based on a real person, Shizuko Mifune, who is rumored to have the gift of foresight. After a demonstration in 1910, she was proclaimed a charlatan and committed suicide a year later by ingesting poison.
Harrison Ford originally had a cameo as a school principal in E.T., but Spielberg chose to cut his scene, fearing it would be too distracting.
Filmmaker George A. Romero, the godfather of the zombie movie genre, actually directed segments of the wholesome children's show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. No, really.
George Lucas was so sure that Star Wars: A New Hope would be a flop that he chose not to go to the movie's official premiere. Instead, he headed off to Hawaii with Steven Spielberg, where they came up with the idea for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The longest fight in anime history is the epic battle between Goku and Frieza in Dragon Ball Z, lasting over 19 episodes, with an overall screen time of roughly 3.5 hours.
In the action comedy movie Hot Fuzz, director Edgar Wright makes a cameo as a staff member at Simon Skinner's supermarket store.
The character of Reflux in Pixar's Incredibles 2, a superhero who vomits lava, was hard to not design repulsive due to the inherent grossness of his power. So the artists based his appearance on a frog to make him more funny-looking and visually appealing.
In The Road to El Dorado, the armadillo that follows Miguel and Tulio throughout is named Bebo, after the director Bebo Bergeron.
For his performance as Benoit Blanc in Knives Out, actor Daniel Craig based his speech pattern on Southern historian Shelby Foote.
So in this episode, we are going to be discussing an Easter-themed cartoon. I held a poll, and fans all wanted us to discuss the Easter special episode of The Simpsons, Simpsons Bible Stories. In this episode, it's spring season. It's very hot, and the family were at church, and the fans have been turned off so that Flanders can hear Reverend Lovejoy, and each of the Simpsons characters start to have dreams, and their dreams are pretty much parodies of biblical stories. So Viva, what's your relationship with The Simpsons? Like, are you a fan? Do you sometimes watch it? Do you not watch it? Have you never seen it?
I have not seen it. I mean, I've seen probably a total of maybe 6 episodes in my whole life, so I'm not really familiar with the characters.
That's completely different to me, who's probably watched the first 25 seasons. So yeah, this is very polar opposite kind of relationship with this show. So what I think it'd be good to maybe discuss each segment of the episode, or would you prefer to kind of like sum it up as a whole?
Yeah, we could do each one.
I think it's important to start with the wraparound segment, like the thing that holds the whole episode together. While there's no egg hunting or emphasis on Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, audiences are reminded that this is an Easter episode, with the hot springtime weather and the inclusion of a chocolate rabbit, which melts throughout the episode.
It as a standalone story, it's fine. I mean, it doesn't really make sense in the context of it being a whole show, but it's not really, I mean, the show it's not a good continuous story either, so.
It's very basic, it's only there to connect the stories together.
Yeah, and I mean, they literally all go to hell at the end of the episode, so you know that it has no bearing on the actual show storyline whatsoever.
It's not canon at all, definitely not. It's a bit like a Treehouse of Horror episode, but I do kind of like the ending. It's a decent wrap-up, because it punishes the Simpsons for sleeping in church, but also goes with the spirit of the show, with the family having to stick together, literally Lisa being forced to stay.
All of this is coming from you actually having seen the show.
Yes,
so I think your impression of every segment and the roles that the different characters have is going to be very dependent on how familiar you are with the show.
So the first story is about Adam and Eve. It's basically got Homer and Marge in the positions of Adam and Eve. You've got Snake as the Snake, and you've got Ned Flanders as God. I feel like the best thing about this segment is Ned, and how they convey his personality just through a hand. You've definitely made me think, because you do kind of need to know Flanders to get the joke of him being God, because he's supposed to be this very calm and friendly sort of character, very laid back, doesn't really let things get to him. But this God is supposed to be ominous and overpowering and quite disciplined.
What doesn't make sense to me then is if we're supposed to assume that that is the character of God, the one who created this like paradise land in the short, then why did he make a porn bush? Because Homer says that there is a porn bush, and that is really not something that this particular God would have ever made. So I'm just confused as to why that's there.
I have no idea. This is a disclaimer that I'll make right away. I and many others believe that The Simpsons lost something starting from season 9. So this is definitely part of the show when it was starting to kind of flanderize its characters a bit and forgetting the spirit of what The Simpsons was. So I totally get that criticism. It's like the joke is coming first before the character.
Yeah. That's kind of all I had on that one. I mean, besides the fact that Homer just seems like a terrible person in it, but I hear that's just his character all the time, so...
Well, Homer can be inconsiderate, but this is post-season 9 Homer Simpson, a version of the character that fans have dubbed Jerk-Ass Homer, because he's more mean-spirited than the Homer we know, with more emphasis on how waggy, dumb, and ignorant he is. Though I guess you could argue that kind of works for this more transgressive version of the biblical story of Adam and Eve. And I kind of like that it does a slight twist on the Adam and Eve story by having Adam be more deceptive and betray Eve. And I kind of like that little twist, but at the same time, he regrets that decision, and he ends up missing Eve. So, and that kind of slightly harks back to Homer and Marge's relationship, which is a big part of the show. Next we have the story of Moses, with Milhouse as Moses, Lisa as Miriam, and Principal Skinner as the Pharaoh. Okay, so I will say that the school metaphor is a clever idea, and it's kind of fun, and when I was a kid and I watched this episode, I found it very relatable. Because when you're a kid, you feel like all authority figures like teachers and headmasters have too much power and you kind of resent them. So when you're a kid and you see something like this, it's kind of fun and kind of easy to connect. So I do remember getting really into this as a kid, and I do feel like Skinner is perfect for a Pharaoh kind of figure because he's very serious, very stern, a bit too sure of himself at the same time. I also think that Milhouse being a really reluctant Moses is pretty funny. His heart's not really entirely in it, and Lisa's got way more passion and a bigger idea, and Milhouse is like, do I really have to do all this? And it's almost like Lisa should be in his position instead. That's funny. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this segment that's pretty funny, but it really doesn't make any sense. In terms of the world that they set up and just the story, like the actual Bible story, and just the real world, how stuff works. Like the burning bush ratting Bart out, that was funny, but it's why did that happen? I don't know, but it was funny.
Yeah, it's very, very referential. You kind of need to know the biblical context of that joke. I'd say the funniest bit for me was when they tried to start plagues by throwing frogs into the Pharaoh's room, and he just eats the frogs. I thought that was kind of good. That was a good gag.
Oh, there's a King Solomon section too.
Yes, I didn't really have an opinion on that because it went too far. So if you've got any thoughts on that, go for it.
I mean, that was my favorite section. I was a little disappointed that they cut it off so quickly.
Yeah.
And that they didn't have the part with the kid. And, I just wanted to see Homer cut lots of different things in half and, eat them. Doesn't make any sense, but none of the other ones do either, so I thought that would be good.
So the last segment of the anthology is a Davy and Goliath sequel parody, which features Bart as Davy and Nelson as Goliath's son, Goliath 2. What I like about this part, and it's the same reason I loved it as a kid, was the idea that it's presented kind of like a movie, because dreams are sort of like movies. Plus, again, this taps into my love of film, so sucker, like I said.
Didn't make very much sense.
How so?
And it wasn't as funny as the other ones, so... Well, it just didn't have as much grounding in the actual Bible story.
Right. Well, I will admit that, I barely remember any of these stories. I've not really read the Bible or associated myself with these stories since I was a Christian as a kid. Then when I became atheist, it just become irrelevant in my life. So I'm not the best authority when it comes to faithful adaptations of biblical stories.
Yeah, well, I just felt like definitely the very first one, it stuck to the main, like, the actual story enough that all the deviations were, like, they felt like satire. And then as it went on, like with the last one, all the deviations were just so much, and it didn't really have anything to do with criticizing the original story.
Right.
That it was just like, here's how goofy we can make a story with these, like, names of characters and, like, the basic stuff that we know about them.
I think because of the dream's ending, I feel like it's leaning more to wanting to parody Hero's Journey films. Or sports films. I feel like it's trying to do that kind of thing. That classic story of a hero trying to get back what was taken from him. I will say that it does have some very good funny moments. When it's really funny, it definitely lands. Particularly Ralph. I loved Ralph. He's barely in it, but like his joke is brilliant. So basically, he volunteers to go and take on Goliath too, but gets killed. Comes back at the end of the episode with no explanation and takes down Goliath too. And just this great line of like, Ralph, I thought you were dead. Nope. I thought that was a pretty fun. That's one of my favorite. That's probably one of my favorite jokes in the entire anthology. And I did like the ending. The twist ending was pretty funny, like subverting the whole story of the hero's journey, where you're supposed to support Bart for this entire segment, and you're supposed to want him to win the day, but you find out Goliath too has taken over as king, but he's actually been really good to his people, and by the end, it's actually Bart, the villain. I kind of like that.
How do they set that joke up though, as justified in the story? Because they the only like kind of foreshadowing for that is when Bart and Goliath 2 fight initially, and they're yelling at each other, and Bart is like, you killed my oldest friend, and Goliath 2 is like, you killed my dad, who was like a friend. And then after that, both of them are portrayed as like not super great people.
Right.
You know? And so it's just completely a surprise when we find out that Goliath 2 is actually a good leader. There's no indication that he would actually be good. So throughout the story, me personally, I wasn't super rooting for Bart because he seemed like a bad guy, but I also wasn't really rooting against him because Goliath 2 seemed like a bad guy, you know?
Right, okay.
And then at the end, they pull out this surprise where it was like, oh, you shouldn't have been rooting for him all along, haha. But I was like, you didn't, okay. Why is that happening, you know? What's the point? There wasn't a point. It was just a thing that happened.
How do you think it could have been done better?
Instead of having the part where when Bart breaks in and he's like at the final confrontation, you know, where we see what's kind of happened in the kingdom during Bart's like training or whatever. If you focus more on like Goliath 2's actual problems with Bart in particular, you know, because we break in and we like see him like killing and eating stuff, like he throws down the bones of this whale, which it doesn't really have any connection to his problem with Bart, so it just kind of looks like he's killing people for no reason, you know, like when you walk up to a tower and bones fall out of it, you think, oh, this is the filmmakers telling me that this is an evil guy, you know? So if they could still make him seem evil, but then it could be a good reveal when it was revealed, oh, he only seemed evil to Bart because he didn't like Bart for a reason. He wasn't evil to everyone.
I can see what you mean now. So overall, what did you think of the episode?
Overall, I thought it was pretty funny. I think I really liked how dependent it was on the voiceover performances. I thought the performances were amazing. There were so many quotable performances, so many quotable lines. the cast were like hitting it out of the park way more than honestly what I hear a lot of times on shows now. I thought the animation, like, it did its job. It could have been better. Like, there were a lot of shots that were drawn in basically the most simple way possible. Like, when they're whipping the kids with the new and improved, like, whip thing, the Omni Whip or whatever. It's literally just each kid in the center of the frame, and then the whip comes down from the side. And that's, like, the most basic way you could show it. I'm sure there's like a more flashy way you could have animated that. That would have been funnier. But overall, it was pretty good, and the characters were pretty well explained in just this short amount of time that they had, and I'm sure it would have been funnier if I knew more what the characters were about.
Yeah. For me, I do quite like it. I feel like this is... out of all the Nun Treehouse of Horror story anthology episodes, this is probably one of the better ones. And it's also one of the better season 10 episodes as well. It's pretty good. I do quite enjoy it. And like I said, I had reasons for loving it as a kid, particularly the Moses segment.
I can't personally judge whether this episode could be considered blasphemous, though, as I'm no expert in Christian beliefs. What do you think? Would religious folks find this episode offensive?
I think that most people, like, even if they were religious, would have a sense of humor about it, because they're not saying this is what the story actually is. They're just dreams that people are having.
Right.
Time for the show to come to a close, as me and Viva have a final showdown in a mega challenge.
Mega Challenge!
In this episode's Mega Challenge, we will be playing Two Truths and a Lie, the film edition, in which one player has to tell 2 true movie facts and 1 made-up lie about a film, while the other player guesses which statement is the lie. So, who is going to go first?
I'll go first, because it's my week, my game week, so... In the Harry Potter movies, they were struggling to cast the role of Harry Potter, and Daniel Radcliffe got the role because the director saw him at the movie theater and thought that his eyes were perfect, even though they were a completely different color than Harry Potter's eyes, but we're gonna not talk about that. Jim Cummings, the iconic Disney voice actor who played the role of the Firefly in Princess and the Frog, was very excited to accept that role because Princess Tiana in the movie reminded him of his own daughter. And after the conclusion of the filming of the Avengers movies, Robert Downey Jr. really wanted a souvenir from the set. So he decided to steal the Avengers A that was on the side of the Stark Industries tower.
This one's tough. I will admit that these are pretty tough, but I'm leaning heavily to the Daniel Radcliffe one because I swear he got cast because someone saw him in the David Copperfield TV movie, so I'm gonna go with that one.
Now, see, that's kind of difficult because that wasn't the lie. But you're kind of correct because they knew of him from the David Copperfield movies and they wanted to cast him, but they couldn't because he had stopped acting at that point. He didn't want to be an actor anymore. And then the director saw him with his dad at the movie theater, just like he happened to, and he thought he was perfect when he saw him, and then he like managed to convince him then to do it. So it's like what you said was right, like you knew the trivia, but you also picked the wrong one. So can we do like half a point? Can we? Because
yeah, I won't take the point.
What you said is technically correct.
I won't. I lost that. It's fine. I lost it. It's fine.
The lie for mine one was the Avengers Tower A. Robert Downey Jr. did not steal it from the set. he wanted it and they didn't give it to him, and then I think like a couple years later they gifted it to him for his birthday or something.
You ready
Yeah.
for yours? So, mine are, the ending to Kevin Smith's Clerks was originally going to have Dante be shot by an armed gunman. Executive producer of Toy Story and chief Pixar shareholder Steve Jobs picked Bob Dylan as his first choice to write and perform the soundtrack to the film of Toy Story, before going with Randy Newman. And the Fox and the Hound 3 Friends Reunited is currently in production at Disney Animation, scheduled for a 2022 release date.
Okay. Let's see. I know the Clerks one is... I'm pretty sure that one is real. I think I've heard that one. I can't imagine that there isn't already a Fox and the Hound 3. So, is it like... Is the lie that one, like they're working on Fox and the Hound like goddamn 7 or something?
That is correct, that is
Yeah.
a lie. You win a point. Damn
Yes,
it.
is there already a Fox and the Hound 3?
There's a 2, there's not a 3. Let's wrap things up. So, I've been Jambariki, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you're getting through the quarantine okay.
Yeah, and I've been Viva Becker.
Cheerio, folks!
Bye!